Jake Claver, how you doing today, sir?
Bless, brother. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, thanks for coming on. I'm looking to start bringing more onto the channel within the community that are actually creating a big impact in the community and bringing more to the community. And your name comes up a lot. A lot of people know who you are. Some may not, though. So could you go ahead and just give us a quick rundown and intro on who you are, what you're currently up to, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sounds great. So, for those who don't know, my name is Jake Claver. I am the chairman of Digital Ascension Group. We are a multifamily office that specializes in digital assets. So, we provide everything that you would think of end to end for private client services, including wealth management, insurance, tax, CPA, estate planning. I try to be a full circle solution for all that stuff. Have about 1 billion in AUM. The majority of that is XRP, as you can imagine. Work with about 4,000 clients total. About 10 of those are family offices. But really just trying to drive things forward, create solutions to be able to generate returns on your XRP and other digital assets, ways that you can leverage those, borrow against them, use them to buy, get a mortgage or all that. And we have institutional custody with Anchorage. So they're an OCC federally chartered bank. They provide segregated bankruptcy remote accounts that are insured up to $100 million a piece for our clients. And yeah, solves a lot of the problems and frictions. These are FBO accounts, so they stay in the client's name. And a lot of this stuff that I've built is selfish. I've got a fairly large position in the asset, and I want things done a very specific way. And there weren't any wealth managers that were willing to do it the way that I wanted it done. So we've built that out over the past 3 years. I made a bunch of money in crypto in 20 and 21, and really just couldn't find professionals that could help me. I called over 100 different firms and whittled it down to the 5 people I worked with to structure my estate and help mitigate taxes. 22, got on social media and started talking about that. And then over the last 3 years, we've put out a lot of social media and educational material. We have the mastermind. We got about 18,000 people there in that group that are all interested in bettering themselves and setting things up for their family, multi-generational stewardship of these assets and learning all the financial education to make sure that they can do that and not mess it up.
Yep. And you've been able to scale incredibly quickly, very, very fast. What would you say is the number one thing that allowed you to do that?
Hiring the right people. Um, I know enough to be dangerous about a lot of stuff. I've worked in M&A before I got into crypto. Um, and what I saw for business owners that I worked with, if once you get to like 10 million in revenue, um, and you have everybody reporting to you, you become the bottleneck yourself. So I work pretty diligently to continue to replace myself and create systems and SOPs and all of that. Um, and I'm very big vision optimist, like dreamer type person. If you put me in the weeds for operations, I can do it, but it's not where I really enjoy spending my time. So I hire people that have been there, done that, understand things, have a playbook that they're able to implement. And they tend to also, if you're hiring A players, they'll bring other A players with them.
Hmm.
We made some really good strategic hires in August. Well, actually, middle of the year in 2024, and that's what's allowed us to scale to over 100 employees and the billion in AUM that we have today.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a phenomenal job, and outside of having the same first name, we are similar in some other ways. We both have big positions in XRP, believe in XRP, and I think a big reason for you and I in having a big position in XRP is because we're similar investors. We're fundamental investors. You focus a lot on the macro side. I do too. Not to say that technicals don't matter, they do in the short
For
term,
sure.
especially if you're a trader. But what I like to focus on is what's happening in the world and what's going on with the underlying fundamentals with the asset that's going to make it successful. With that, we've got an interesting situation with global economics right now. Uh, could you give us kind of your outlook on the rest of this year, kind of what's going on, with a lot of stuff going on right now, but kind of your outlook for crypto, Um, there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers in this digital revolution. Obviously, we both believe in XRP, but just looking at 2026 as a whole and where we're at, kind of what's your outlook going forward?
Super bullish. Um,
Love to hear it.
so I'll kind of put it back on Monica Long. There's a couple weeks ago during XRP Community Day over there on Twitter. She was nice enough to share. One of the panelists had asked her, you know, what one phrase would you use for XRP and XRPL here in 2026? And her answer was full scale institutional adoption here in 2026. So we're at the end of Q1. You got Evernorth. They've filed their S4. That's going to be the first DAT here domestically in the US for XRP, which is a big, big move. You have all these ETFs. We've got, a lot of ETFs potentially going live here in April based on approval from the SEC here in the next, actually today. I see a lot of liquidity moving into this asset class. I see a rotation out of the Bitcoin ETFs and the other ETFs that are going to be launched. And that's what I think will drive down Bitcoin dominance for this cycle. I think it's been a prolonged cycle because of the ETFs and the liquidity being aggregated there in Bitcoin for the majority of it. But I do think you're going to see the implementation of these protocols for different applications. The first of which I believe is the back-end settlement of the stock market. Last year at Swell, you had the the NASDAQ, president of NASDAQ, say that distributed ledger technology would be implemented to settle the back end of the stock market between the clearinghouses and brokers. They're obviously going to tokenize the stock market this year. We've seen Securitize and Ondo and a couple other players start to work with these large exchanges to be able to tokenize the equities themselves. So, I think that that'll happen in the latter half of this year. You've got big banks and institutions leaning in finally to be able to, utilize these protocols and stable coins as part of their infrastructure to be able to create efficiencies and settle payments faster and the settlement of back into the markets. And we got 24/5 trading, or 23/5 trading is where they're starting. So 23 hours a day, 5 days a week, they're going to be trading on the stock market, similar to crypto is, 24/7. And I think maybe we'll get there over the long term. It's probably going to stay a 5-day work week for a little while. But yeah, super excited. I think this is going to be the breakout year for this technology. And if, like you said, if you're positioned correctly in the right assets, I think you could do very, very well.
Absolutely agree. And I love that you brought up what Monica Long said about this year being really the production stage, the integration. And I think everything's going to happen very quickly because they've been working on everything for years and years and years, and everything's essentially good to go. And so, with that, I want to lead into the next question because I know people in the community are going to want to know kind of your stance right now on what's going on with the reverse carry trade. You've been pretty spot on with the domino theory, maybe a little timing off at the
Yeah,
end here, which
yeah.
is obviously incredibly hard to predict timing. But in terms of the domino theory, which I'm very familiar with, you've nailed it. So right now, kind of what are you looking at in terms of that?
Well, the yen versus the USD finally broke 160 just earlier today. It's, the weekend in Japan at this point. We're recording this on Friday, March 27th. So that's the level that I've been waiting on for the Bank of Japan to have to intervene and potentially raise interest rates. And that's really going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. They've been put in that position by oil, being substantially higher in price because of the Strait of Hormuz being shut down. I called that about a year before it happened, which is wild.
Okay.
And to see it play out real time, it's taken a little bit longer than people would have liked, I think, from when that was actually shut down to the actual impacts being felt. But that's how the world works, right? It's not an immediate overnight thing until it is.
Right.
And so waiting on the Bank of Japan to react to the yen, depreciating against the dollar past the threshold that they're comfortable with. We haven't ever had an emergency meeting for the Bank of Japan. That would be unprecedented if we did.
Mhm.
But in the circumstances that are transpiring, I don't see that that's outside of the question. So
Right.
that's kind of what I'm waiting on. And once that happens, we'll see a rotation out of U.S. Treasuries into their own domestic bonds as their rates rise and our rates drop. And the only way that they're going to be able to navigate that situation and stabilize the bond market is the issuance of stable coins here domestically. And the
Mhm.
linchpin for that has been, back and forth with Coinbase there on Capitol Hill about the yield, which I
Right.
think they've finally come to a resolution on.
That's what it sounds like.
Just so happens to work out timing wise. Um, so if they are able to move forward and go ahead and issue those stable coins, that'll drive enough domestic demand for those treasuries. They'll soak those up and they'll stabilize the bond market. There's still going to be a significant impact on global markets, though. There's going to be a complete repricing as that liquidity is drawn out of markets, in my opinion, somewhere between a 30 and 50% drawdown across the board. I think you could see, a 50% or a $50 silver. I think you could see $2,100 gold.
Wow.
Stock market, back to 5,000 on the S&P, maybe even lower than that. Just depends. And I think it'll be short lived. I think they'll be able to turn it around once they move to the velocity of money picking up. That'll start driving GDP. And the implementation of these networks actually removes some of the inflation in the economy, 2 to 3%, because of MasterCard and Visa and those payment providers. If they're able to reduce their fees substantially because now they're using this tech, that saves a lot of money for people. I think gas could stay high for a little while though, just because even if they, reinstate the strait and it's open for business, things are going to be impacted for at least 2 or 3 months. So
Legitimately, yeah.
yeah, I would expect oil to continue to rise or maybe stabilize around 120 to 150, somewhere in there. And then the Japanese yen priced or crude priced in the Japanese yen has risen back to 1600 today. So with the depreciation of their currency, they're starting to have to pay more money for fuel and energy. And that's why I think that they're going to have to react and raise the interest rates. But how does that actually lead to the appreciation of XRP? Like that's always people's question. Um, that's really the only solution to get us out of this debt spiral and the problem. Because if they've got to print more money, uh, you're deeper in a hole. You need something that's appreciating on these balance sheets to offset the liabilities. In the past, what they've done is they took all the gold from the people in the U.S. and then they repriced it, right? That currently still sits at like $42 and change on the Fed's balance sheet. So they could reprice it to today's price and that would be fine. But there's not enough collateral there to cover the difference. And so you're going to need some other assets as tier one assets designated by the BIS. That's also happening in Q2 here. We've seen the BIS come out and say that they're going to designate Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and XRP here in Q2, what they actually are as far as collateral for banks to hold them. April 1st, the OCC is allowing banks and institutions to hold digital assets on their balance sheet. Um, so right around the corner here, we're not far from the actual, what these things are and how they're going to be used. And I think they have to be, certain prices for
Right.
that to happen. Um, and the other piece, to be able to de-risk from the Bitcoin ETFs as those fall, we haven't seen a 40 or 50% drawback in Bitcoin, since it's been listed on the stock exchange through the ETFs. There's been some volatility, but nowhere near what we've seen in the past. If we saw that, Bitcoin trades close to real time, 30 to 45 minutes to settle between counterparties. But the back end of the stock market is still T plus one. So for them to start to settle on the back end of the stock market, be able to de-risk from that when the reverse carry trade unwinds or when Tether has issues, they're going to need, XRP to be a very high price. And I think if BlackRock were to come out with an ETF, they could cause a supply shock and drive the price to wherever they need it to be in order to be able to save the system when it happens.
Yeah, and I feel as though, like many, we're extremely close. We
Yeah.
we are very, very close. But as an investor, the hardest part is waiting, right? And in the meantime, we have a sluggish market. We've got a down market. And sometimes that kind of beats up the community. What we need in the community, in crypto in general, not just XRP, is unity during these times. Because if we take a look at the stock market, absolutely dwarfs the crypto market, right? There, if you look at the
100
population of the
times.
world, there isn't a whole lot of us. If you look at it, you zoom out. And so it's incredibly important to have unity. And that is one reason I wanted to bring you on here, Jake, is and bring others in the community that I think are actually helping to bring more to the community and strengthen the community. What are your views on times like this to help us kind of get through it? Because again, it's tough. It truly is waiting, knowing what's inevitable, knowing that we're close, but it's still truly hard day to day when we see the market pulling back.
Well, some of the calluses I have, other people don't from being here for 5 and 6 years, right? If you've been through a couple cycles, this is just a normal deal for you. But if you're new to this type of investment, to see the volatility and the drawdown can be very disheartening, right? Like you can be down on your luck and feel like it's never going to end. I kind of draw on wisdom from Warren Buffett during these times. So if you could only make, call it 10 investments over your lifetime, those are probably going to be the ones that pay out the most, but they're going to take time to play out. I mean, look at Michael Burry in '08.
Mhm.
He was 2 years early, and his investors hated him for the whole time until he was right at the end, and then they loved him after that, right? And now he's become prolific. He's got movies made about him, all these things. Anytime you're building something that's going to last generations, it's very unlikely that it's a quick turnaround on it. Building a business can take multiple decades. You look at the richest people in the world, if it's Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or Bezos, it took them 30, 40 years of compounding work and putting in time and sacrifice in order to get to the level that they're at. And at a point, I think a lot of people want things to be linear. They want things to go up and to the right in a very smooth, controlled motion.
That's
In
not,
reality, the world moves in exponential notation. So you drag along the bottom and it's horrible and it sucks for a period, and then you hit an inflection point and it rises very quickly. And so if you're, I think a lot of people have this paradigm that it should just move slowly up and to the right, and then that's how markets work, because that has been how it's worked in traditional finance. Um, if you look at the average over the indexes, but if you look at individual stocks, they move how I'm talking about.
right.
Companies move
Volatility.
exponential once there's enough growth and they hit their inflection point. So you would be invested in one of these companies effectively if you're holding certain tokens. There's not really, I mean, I guess there's some indexes that you can, purchase now on certain marketplaces, few and far between. But if you have an allocation, you're probably holding one of these, directly, if not through an ETF. And so it's just that paradigm. I think people want it to be faster than it is, and it requires patience. And you have to build, ideally, you're going to build skills, traits, and beliefs during these times that will help you and benefit you on the other side when we do see the price appreciation. I see so many people that say, no, I'm going to quit my job as soon as this happens. And I'm like, maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
Maybe hang out for 6 months
Slow
and
your
just
roll a little bit.
sit on your money. I'm not saying don't take profits. I'm just saying, drastically changing your life and upgrading your lifestyle very quickly can put you on your back foot. Ideally, you're going to buy assets. You're going to structure things the right way to mitigate creditor risk and structure it for taxes. And then you can enjoy the fun part of it, right? My concern mostly for people, especially in XRP and some of these other digital assets that I think are going to be explosive in growth, is they sell out because they have the cash, and that's great. And then they end up being like a lottery winner. 3 to 5 years from now, they're bankrupt because they didn't know how to manage that and become a steward of that money. They didn't look at it like, this is their family's money for multiple generations. They're looking at it like this is my fun money that
Right.
I did the work for, right? I'm not discounting anybody's work or sacrifice. I'm just saying that there's a bigger opportunity to leave a legacy for people if you do it the right way.
Absolutely. Well, I want to kind of pivot towards talking about your business and what you're up to. As of right now, kind of what do you have going on currently? Any new developments? Kind of what's the future look for your business?
Yeah. So rolling out multiple products here in 2026 to be able to generate returns and yield on digital assets, XRP, Bitcoin, and a few others. Those are all on the roadmap. Looking at some other custodians, we just made an announcement with Uphold here recently. So we're white labeling their solution. People will have access to a bank account and trading and be able to hold other assets outside of what Anchorage currently custodies. Flare you can imagine there's a lot of our client base that has a significant allocation to that token. Anchorage doesn't custody it. And so to be able to get access to DeFi and credit cards against your digital assets, they just made that announcement over there at Uphold.
Mhm.
A liquid money market, so that if you are parking cash, it's working for you, and you can move that out at any given time. Cash back in crypto on your card issued there. And you can manage that all in one spot, along with the documents for your LLC and the corporate veil and everything else that we provide for our clients. Just so that, again, it's kind of a one-stop shop, end-to-end solution, where you're not having to, piecemeal things together like I had to in the beginning.
Love it. Well, I got one more question for you, and I know you're a busy guy, so we'll kind of end it at that.
That's good.
One thing you said is, the callus is on your hand, and
Yeah.
I've been investing for over a decade, but just got into crypto late 2019. But it is that experience. It's being through cycles. It's seeing ups and downs that really helps get you to where you need to go. Now, with XRP specifically, what would you say is the number one thing, the single number one thing that keeps you confident day to day in XRP and understanding that I'm with you. I have a large amount allocated to this digital asset and it's a volatile emerging tech, right? It's very
Yeah.
volatile asset class. What is the number one thing that keeps you confident day to day in XRP?
Well, I just want to touch on one thing, and then I'll answer the question.
Sure.
So, most of the time in investing, you're always going to risk one less zero for the one that you're trying to get, especially in entrepreneurship also. So, if you're only willing to risk $10,000, maybe $100,000 is kind of the cap that you should be looking to capture. If you're willing to risk 100,000, maybe a million, it just levels up from there. It's just one more zero on the end every time for what you're willing to risk to get on the other side of that, a 10x, right?
Mhm.
Um, but what keeps me confident in XRP, I've been very blessed to be in rooms and have conversations with a lot of prominent people in the ecosystem. We've been to, I don't know, probably 40 conferences over the past 4 years. You know, I have a relationship with Simon at Uphold. We've talked to Ripple plenty of times. We've been to Swell. We've talked with R3. We talked with SBI, Ondo, Oasis Pro Markets. We have another side of our business where we have an end-to-end solution for the tokenization of SPVs and the management and administration of those, for all the compliance and backend. And that's afforded us opportunities to talk to people that are actually tokenizing equities and other financial products. Um, and so I have a unique perspective because of that, those conversations. Um, but yeah, look, it's an amalgamation of stuff. If you're just getting into this and you haven't had the time to do the due diligence, I woke up for, every day for a year and a half and tried to figure out how I was wrong about XRP, because I don't think I'm the smartest guy in the world. There's lots of people that are smarter than me. And for me to be like, okay, I know which one of these is going to be the thing that runs the whole financial system. Like, just realistically, come on, right? So, doing due diligence and asking all the questions about it being frozen or taken or clawed back or who controls it or the escrow or, all of the actual tokenomics that are involved with the asset and how it works and the compliance that's built into the mainnet. Um, it's an amalgamation of things that are required in order for something to be the back end settlement for the entire financial system. And it checks all those boxes. There's really not anything that it doesn't check other than the scalability. Right now, it's around 1500 TPS is the high end for the XRPL. But if you have, and I've asked, Matt Hamilton this on Twitter, you would need an implicit or explicit subnet alongside the main net in order to be able to scale infinitely. And Bob Way just happens to have a patent on a subnet for the XRPL. So, payment channels, batch payments, digital identity, um, credentials, the multi-purpose token. There's just so many different things that they've passed over the last couple years that lend itself to this being what Larry Fink talked about, being one unified ledger that everything settles back to when he was at Davos here in 2026 in January. So, there's oracles out there. There's a lot of other good blockchains that have unique use cases that provide value And I think it'll be a multi-chain future, but I just think everything will end up settling back through XRP when it's all said and done.
And I absolutely agree. I want to thank you, Jake, so much for coming on the show today. I'm going to leave your socials below, as well as my links. Is there anything you want to end this with?
Um, I would just say, stay patient and humble. There's a lot of people that are going to come into a lot of blessings that are watching this, and I know that, like zero doubt on that one. But it's going to take a little bit of sacrifice and a little bit of time to get there. And so if you're feeling down, just know that pray about it a little bit, and that you're in good hands, and things are going to work out for all of us.
Love it. Thank you so much, man. We'll have to do this again.
Dude, thanks so much for having me.
All right, take care.